Pilgrim's Progress from this world to that which is to come.
It's a very large-scale opera, 20 solo parts. It's not easy to put on. It's a demanding piece, and I congratulate the Philharmonia at finding the resources and the will and the belief in this work to put it on.
I got a phone call from the Philharmonia Orchestra back in January saying that they were going to put on this large and very important festival, and doing a semi-staged production of Pilgrim's Progress was part of the planning, and would I like to be involved? And I leapt at the opportunity because it's not an opera I'm familiar with, and indeed very few people I think are familiar with it. So this is a huge opportunity for me and for the public to explore a piece which is being, I think, unjustly neglected. The piece is, in a sense, like a survey of his entire output, and I think that's rather fascinating. It's as if he was feeding his ideas backwards and forwards throughout his compositional life.
Pilgrim's Progress is an allegory of a journey, a spiritual journey, and I suppose in many ways it reflects Bunyan's own spiritual journey. I think he was quite a troubled young man. He was a bell ringer at Elstow. He was convinced that God would punish him. Pilgrim's Progress itself, in a way, reflects something of Bunyan's own spiritual journey from non-belief to belief in Christ.
Bunyan was the inspiration here. Vaughan Williams was inspired by Whitman. Whitman saw God in every blade of grass. And Bunyan has this sense of the salvation of the soul. Christian Pilgrim, as Vaughan Williams renamed it, has got this burden on his back. And how is he going to get rid of this burden? And of course, the burden is removed by the discovery, the realization of salvation through God, and the celestial city beckons.
I try to look at every piece on its own merits. Where does it fit in a tradition? I suppose in a tradition of spiritual operas, it's somewhere between Parsifal and Satyagraha. It's like a long spiritual meditation, and that makes it very particular in the whole operatic genre.
And anyone who fought in the First World War related to Bunyan, because you had the valley of the shadow of death, the slough of despair. All these images that Bunyan created from the 17th century were so relevant to the soldiers fighting in the war, in the battlefields of the Somme. Vaughan Williams carried Bunyan's Pilgrim's Progress with him when he was on Vimy Ridge in 1916. So it had this personal relevance as well as this spiritual relevance.
He loved the book, and he read it, he adapted the text himself for the opera, and he digested it very carefully over a very long period. This piece, as you know, was in gestation for over 40 years. And it was clearly a labour of love for Vaughan Williams, and it clearly represented his own pilgrimage, in some sense, through the first 50 years of the 20th century.
Well, with all the struggles that people have, we all have our burdens on our backs, symbolically. And I think for people today, the spirituality and the sense of the desire for answers and a solution to the burdens that we face is as relevant today as when Bunyan wrote it in Bedford Jail and when Vaughan Williams set it in the 1940s.